Hey guys, what's up? I have been learning a lot about habits recently, and I want to share what I'm learning because I'm convinced that when you understand habits, it's one of the best ways to level up in your life and in your studies. In this week's episode, I'm going to unpack habit formation in the context of studying to help you do really well for this semester. And all of these ideas come from the book The Power of Habit, written by Charles Duhigg. So if you enjoy this video, definitely go and read his book. It's really engaging. I can't recommend it enough. Go check it out. I'm going to leave a link in the description. In this week's episode, we'll begin by briefly looking at why you can't actually trust your brain. Then we're going to delve into the design structure of a habit. Next up, I'm going to talk you through what actually incentivizes habits. And finally, we're going to look at how you can change unhelpful habits. And there are timestamps down below, so feel free to skip ahead to another section if you want. And with that said, let's get into the video. So, why shouldn't you trust your brain? Obviously, the brain is a highly complex and extremely important organ of the body, and I really don't want to discredit it. It controls thought, memory, emotion, touch, motor skills, vision, breathing, temperature, hunger, and every process that regulates our body. However, when it comes to decision making, our brain isn't as helpful as we might automatically assume. In fact, in cognitive and social psychology, we've learned that the brain can make a lot of different types of errors or biases to conserve energy. In Rolf Dubelli's The Art of Thinking Clearly, he describes many of humans' common thinking errors, describing us as poor decision makers because we struggle to operate from a logical framework. Essentially, our feelings and our intuition can get in the way. And this is where we see habits come into play. In The Power of Habit, Charles talks about how most of the decisions we make are not well thought out, but come from our habits, which can be both healthy and unhealthy. So with this in mind, in order to put our best foot forward towards our goals, it's essential that we develop a fluency for understanding habits, how they're created and how we can change them. And that's what this video is going to help you do. So let's start talking about the design structure of a habit. The part of our brain that is responsible for storing habits is called the basal ganglia. When we're learning something new, the basal ganglia is working really hard to understand this new information until it feels comfortable with the pattern. And it's triggered to operate by a cue. So this cue is the first component of a habit. The second component is the routine that follows, and the third component is the reward. Together, these components make a habit loop. So this is the structure of the habit: the cue, the routine, and the reward. One cue that I've noticed within myself when it comes to doing assignments is not being too sure what I should do next. This uncertainty acts as a cue which prompts me to grab my phone and start scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. So this is my routine. And the reward is that I start to become distracted. I forget that I feel sort of uncertainty or self-doubt about what to do next for my assessment. That's how small and dangerous unhelpful habit loops can be. What's worse is that we can't get rid of habit loops once they're formed. They're encoded into our brain and they stay there forever. But that's why having this structure in mind is so crucial, because the good news is you can actually become an engineer of your habits by developing this self-awareness. So now we know the key ingredients: cue, routine, and reward. But there's one more component which is very important, but very subtle in terms of incentivizing your habit loops. To unpack this, let's quickly talk about a monkey called Julio who loved grape-flavored juice. An experiment was conducted where Julio needed to perform a complex task in order to receive the grape-flavored juice. After doing this over a period of time, the scientists began to realize that Julio's brain was anticipating the juice as soon as he saw the complex task. This meant that the cue of seeing the complex task became not just important for following the routine, but also important for craving the reward. The researchers had essentially demonstrated that to create or change a habit, a cue and a reward on their own weren't enough to sustain it. To actually feed a habit loop, you need to be craving the reward. In the context of study, let's say you want to start doing your readings in advance. One trick that you could use is to start craving a particular reward. The key thing to remember here though is that the reward needs to be something that you rarely have access to. This could be like a specific playlist that you rarely let yourself listen to, or a really delicious snack that again you don't often have, or maybe it's watching your favorite content creator. But in order for this reward to properly work, it can only be used for the specific routine of, say, reading. Using this reward outside of this routine means that it will start to become less effective. Another trick in the power of habit is to actually start envisioning the reward. When you're doing your weekly reading for uni, imagining yourself down the track working in your dream career can help elicit this craving response. After you've read a journal article, maybe the reward could be writing out all the things that you aspire for your career, or watching something that inspires you for your dream job, or even just looking at pictures for where you imagine yourself to be in the future. Over time, you'll begin to crave doing this task because you'll begin to associate it with your goals for the future, where you want to get to in life. Do you remember at the beginning of this video when I said that bad habits can't be extinguished? This makes sense because we wouldn't want our brain in turn to forget our helpful habits. So when you find yourself stuck with an unhelpful habit, what you can do is change the routine. Keep the cue, provide the same reward, but instead insert a new routine. To do this, you need to first look at establishing what your cue is. So you can ask yourself questions like, what am I feeling, thinking, or doing just before I perform this unhelpful habit? This is what's called awareness training, because often our cues are so ingrained that they require us to dig deep in order to figure out what they are. Next, you want to try and understand why you're performing a particular routine, because this will help you understand why it's so rewarding. And remember, the reward can be very subtle. It could be a particular feeling, a certain sensation, or even distraction. To really understand your cue, routine, and reward, you might even want to spend a week just recording how often you perform this habit loop. The next part of the process is to swap an unhelpful routine with what's called a competing response. As soon as you feel that cue, you need to make it impossible for yourself to do that unhelpful routine and immediately start doing your new routine. As an example, let's say that you're stuck in a habit loop of watching TV after dinner on weeknights. You really want to start getting better grades at uni, but so often you feel overwhelmed and you struggle with procrastination. The cue in this scenario might be that as soon as you finish washing the dishes, you go and sit down on the couch to watch TV. And the reward is that you're no longer focused on everything that you need to get done. It becomes this escape. In this scenario, you could try and modify this habit loop by going straight to your desk after you finished washing the dishes, sitting down and doing some focused study for maybe 20 minutes, and then giving yourself the reward of watching some TV on your phone. You could also incorporate this new routine with a habit tracker and give yourself a tick every time you do 20 minutes of, say, focused work. Ticking off your accomplishment manipulates the craving response that you're working towards becoming a better student. Another important component to behavior change that sits outside of the habit loop is self-belief. To change an old pattern, you need to start believing that you can become a more confident student or start getting higher grades. And self-belief is something that we really need to cultivate within ourselves, because in high-pressure situations, it's really easy for us to slip back into unhelpful habits, like the weeks leading up to exam week. If this is something that you really struggle with, one strategy you can use is start spending time with other students who also want to improve in their studies. Overall, this video's goal was to give you a deeper understanding of habits and how you can engineer them. But it's important to remember that this video has made the process of changing habits sound really simple for the sake of being concise. Creating a new habit or changing a habit takes a lot of work. Sometimes there are other factors that are at play, and often it will take a long time before you see any results. But having a deeper understanding of how habits work will dramatically improve your ability to spot habit loops in your life that you might want to alter. So use this knowledge to your advantage. I hope that this video helps. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you later. Bye!